Hi everyone, Peter here from Movement and Performance, and in this presentation we're going to cover long-term athletic development, and this presentation is going to focus on young athletes and how we can set them up to throughout the youth and adolescence to enjoy a long and healthy sports career. So the first thing we need to understand is that we need to be in this process of training for a long time. So for athletes to actually reach their peak performance, it's going to take years, if not decades, to actually reach that high level. So if we're going to be training for that many years, then the training needs to be sustainable and the athletes need to enjoy themselves. Otherwise, adherence to long-term training is not really going to be a realistic thing if they don't like the training and or it's not sustainable for them to sustain for such a long period of time. So athletes can always, have that mind over matter attitude, but that will probably only get them so far. If they don't enjoy it, it's unlikely they're going to be able to have that mind over matter mindset for decades. So if we make training sustainable and enjoyable, it's going to probably allow athletes to adhere to the training process for a long period of time and therefore enjoy continual progress. And I think it's a good point to think of training careers similar to training seasons. So in the off-season and the early pre-season, training is going to be very general to help regenerate from the previous season and to start building a base. And then as the season gets closer, the training gets more specific. And training careers can be thought of in the same way, in that the start of training careers, so kids when they're first playing sports, should probably have a lot more general types of training. And as they get older and older and they reach higher and higher performances, then training should become more specific. So I've got this pyramid here as an example. So in the younger years of childhood, young athletes can play multiple sports, so maybe 3 sports, and then as they sort of reach this adolescent period, they might only play 2 sports, and then finally when they get to 17, 18 years old, that's when they might specialize in their chosen sport that they're going to excel at. And this is going to help build a big general base of different athletic movement skills and different athletic qualities, and then that can then be narrowed down and transferred into that particular sport that they choose later on. So the issue that we have if we only specialize in one sport early is that it can allow for a lack of development of general athletic qualities, which is ultimately going to hinder future performance. So if we expose athletes to a wide range of movement skills and a wide range of athletic qualities, then that's going to build a big general foundation for athletes to then, as we just mentioned, specialize in and transfer all that potential later on when a given sport is selected. And so if we load tissues in kids and adolescents in the same way all the time without any break or any variation, we'll have an increased risk of injury, especially through those periods of peak height velocity and when they have their growth spurt. There's probably going to be an increased risk of overuse injuries at that point in time. And then probably the most important and probably the most detrimental point is that if athletes specialize too early, there can be a real lack of enjoyment. So the kids actually won't enjoy playing the sport, which can lead to psychological burnout where they just completely quit the sport or even quit sport altogether, and they never actually pick it up again because of the trauma they went through as a child and the fact that there was too much pressure or whatever the reasons are. So there are some exceptions to this early specialization rule, because we have sports like gymnastics and diving, which actually require peak performance to be, achieved by a very young age. So if we have, 15, 16-year-olds going to the Olympics, because that's when just the natural selection of the sport needs athletes of that age, they actually need to specialize early in order to reach peak performance. And sports like this, such as gymnastics and diving, they're often associated with body image issues, eating disorders, delayed maturation, and abnormal menstrual functions in young females. So there are issues with these sort of sports. However, it's sort of a risk versus reward situation where if the athlete wishes to achieve peak performance, that's a decision made by them, but there may potentially be issues in the future that may arise from the extreme early specialization. But these are the exception rather than the generality of these sports. So disregarding those exceptions, some rules to basically help young athletes enjoy a long and healthy sports career is that we can encourage athletes to participate in many sports when they're young, expose them to a wide variety of different movements and different athletic qualities. And we don't want to pressure young athletes into playing certain sports or being in certain competitions or situations that they don't want to be in, because that is going to lead to them not actually enjoying themselves. And that's a good segue into this point where we want to focus on enjoyment and participation rather than always focusing on results and numbers. So maybe focusing on how the kids, how do they feel, how they're enjoying the training, and that's going to allow the kids to continue to go to training and participate, and eventually they can specialize when they're a lot older. And its focus on enjoyment is a good point, because as kids get older, they'll naturally find enjoyment in different things. So it doesn't have to be as they're 16, 17 years old. They're not going to be, their enjoyment's not going to be the same as a young kid who's just starting out their first season in a soccer, for example. So they're going to enjoy actually getting better. So that's maybe something to focus on as they get older. And the last point is that it's a good idea to allow the young athlete to, naturally choose their desired sport throughout their adolescence and childhood, rather than forcing them to do a sport that the parents or the coaches think they should be doing. So basically the opposite to that, we don't want to force young athletes into doing just one sport only. We don't want to make them participate in competitions and be in situations that they don't want to be in. And we don't want to make, sporting events all about results and performance. We want them to be about, as we mentioned here, the focus should be on enjoyment and participation and their feeling of the sport, as opposed to just focusing on numbers. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't already, you can follow Movement and Performance on Facebook and Instagram. And if you haven't, you can also subscribe on YouTube for updates on more on future informative videos. So on Facebook and Instagram, you'll find basically these research infographics where the latest research is put into these simple and easy to understand pictures. And that's going to allow you to stay up to date with the latest research in sports performance. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you got something out of the presentation.